Hi everyone, welcome back to Virtue's Voyager. I'm Lizzie, and today's video we're going to talk about caring. So I'll just get started with the usual book, and then I've got some different ideas here that I'll throw in throughout the process. So what is caring? Caring is love and attention to people and things that matter to you. You can show you care about someone by saying and doing things that help them. Caring about something you are doing means giving it your very best. When you care for someone, you pay a lot of attention to them and take an interest in what is happening to them. Caring shows that something or someone really matters to you. You can care for yourself, for others, a pet, or a special thing. When you care for an animal, you watch over it and take good care of its needs. When you are careful with something, you treat it gently and respectfully, making sure that you don't hurt it. When you do a careful job, you give it your very best effort. Caring comes from within. It is a sign of love, respect, and concern. Ooh, that's interesting that other virtues are used within caring. Caring people take the interests of others as their own. They do all that they can to show people that they are loved and valued. Caring about yourself means you treat yourself with respect and concern that you deserve. So that's their definition of caring. And then I did a little Googling, as per usual. I like to use multiple sources to kind of, get a little bit deeper. And when I looked it up, it said caring, like the definition, was displaying kindness and concern for others, or the practice of looking after those unable to care for themselves. So that's kind of the idea of like a caregiver, for example. I think that's a really interesting word combination as well. Like caregiver, somebody who gives care to people. That could be in a medical setting, that could be at home, but we all take care of each other, and hopefully the people around you take care of you as well. If they don't, it doesn't mean you should stop caring about them, but that does mean that you should maybe consider finding some people who are willing to be a little bit more balanced with caring in your life. The other thing that I found is Harvard has a project called Making Caring Common, and they had some really interesting stuff on that website as well. So if you'd like to check it out, definitely go take a look. And their goal is to kind of spread the message of caring, and there's a lot of volunteer opportunities, I believe. So why should we practice caring? Caring makes the world a better place to live in. Caring people help others feel less alone. They help people when they are hurt, sick, or weak, not because they have to or because it is their job. They care because other people matter to them. Because they care, people can trust them. Caring people treat special things with extra concern and attention. Caring people treat everyone with love, respect, and concern they deserve. Caring begins by loving and respecting others and yourself. Without caring, nothing and no one matters. Everyone is alone. If someone is hurt or sick, no one will help unless she can make some money or take advantage of the person. Without caring, people would only do things for others because they expect something in return. People would become suspicious of each other. When people have an attitude of, I don't care, they do a sloppy or incomplete job. Sometimes that can be dangerous for people and the environment. When you don't care about yourself, others get the impression that you don't matter very much. They start being careless with you too. Yeah, that's interesting that if you don't care about yourself, then others see that and they think that you don't deserve the care because you're not even giving it to yourself. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. There's all kinds of metaphors, like you can't pour from an empty cup. But I personally read one at one point that I really thought was interesting, and it was, you can't boil an empty kettle, because pouring from an empty cup doesn't give you anything, right? And if you're taking care of yourself, then you have more to give. But when it comes to a kettle, if you're trying to boil water in an empty kettle and there's no water there, there's no care for yourself, not only can it ruin the kettle and potentially like be a problem for the stove, that kettle is virtually destroyed. Like, you might be able to fix it, but it's going to take a lot more time and effort than if you were to just put water in the first place. So when you think about caring for yourself, don't necessarily just think about, okay, what do I need to do so that I can care for others? Because yes, that's important too, but what can you do for yourself that's fulfilling for yourself, that you would want a friend to do? Like, if you're thinking about things like, oh, I wish they would read my mind, and I wish they would buy me little gifts so that I know they're thinking about me, or I wish that they would give my partner would give me a back rub. Like, start doing some of those things for yourself if you can. If you're craving physical touch, you can massage your own shoulders. I know it's not always quite the same, but there's a lot of things that you can do to give back to yourself. We often tend to give care in a way that we would want to receive care. So think about ways that you give care to other people. Do you want a similar thing in return? How can you give that care to yourself? Maybe that's buying yourself a little extra coffee or a chocolate bar, or like I said, giving yourself a massage, or planning your day out for tomorrow. I love, personally, like, acts of service is something that I really respond to. I feel very loved when people, like, when a partner or a friend or anything, if I'm sick, they're like, hey, let me come over and I'll wash your sheets for you and your clothes, or I'll do your dishes for you. Like, that just makes me feel, those kinds of things make me feel so loved. Or let me cook you a meal. So I try to do that with my future self. I try to set her up for just a very comfortable day. So that might mean the night before I lay out my clothing and I get my bag ready or whatever, and then in the morning I wake up and I'm like, oh, all of this stuff is already done for me. I set myself up for success, and that just is one way that I care about myself and I find really fulfilling. So maybe think about putting a little care for yourself in your next couple days here, next couple weeks. Yeah. How do you practice care? When you feel love and concern for others, look for ways to show your interest in them. Ask them questions about how they are, what they think and feel, and what did you do today? How is your day going? Are you feeling better? And how can I help? When you are careful, you handle things with control and gentleness. When someone or something is entrusted to your care, you treat their trust as something sacred, giving your best and nothing but your best. When you care about the things you do them with enthusiasm and excellence, whether it is a job at home or an assignment for school. When you care about yourself, you treat your body with respect. You wear clean clothes, take a bath, and comb your hair. You take care of your needs. If you are lonely, you find a friend and spend some time. If you are hungry, you get something to eat. If you are sad, you have a little cry and then decide how to make things better. That's another really interesting point. I think that throughout our lives, especially if you live in like the US or a country where public school is really common, you can go to public school and then you're immediately, from the time that you get there, taught to not care about yourself and to ignore your needs. Now, originally, this was very useful because they were trying to create individuals who would work in factories and who would follow the rules, and who were more like machines than people. So as they continue to do this, there's a lot of things that kind of continued into current public school, like rows of desks and having to raise your hand when you need to go to the bathroom and those kinds of things. But you're taught to ignore your needs. If you need to get up and move in the middle of class, you're not allowed to do that. You have to sit still. And a lot of our body's natural cues, like maybe you learn better when you're moving, right? Maybe if you're listening to a podcast, you take it in way better if you're taking a walk. But when you're in school, you're taught to ignore those things. You're also taught to ignore if you have to use the restroom at an inopportune time. You have to eat lunch at a specific time if you're hungry at other times. too bad, stick it out. If you need to rest, like if you want to take a nap, you can't do that. You have to stay awake. You have to stay with the class. So as we grow up, we learn to ignore our body's cues at every single turn. Like if you need quiet time, you can't have that. You know, there's so many things. And then when we get to be adults, a lot of us get to the point where we're like sitting there and then we're like, oh my gosh, I literally feel like I'm gonna pee myself. Like I have to go to the bathroom right now because I've been ignoring my body's cues for so long that I don't even realize that they're happening. And so part of taking care of ourselves is relearning that it's okay to take care of yourself. And that can take some time. So if it doesn't feel supernatural at first, just keep on keeping on. If you need to set some alarms to remind yourself to eat or go to the bathroom or those kinds of things, definitely do that. There's a lot of really great ways that you can learn to take care of yourself. So I thought that was interesting that they said that if you need certain things, do them. What would caring look like? This is the next section. What would caring look like if you are doing a chore for your family? If you notice one of your friends looks a bit sad, or if you come in from playing outside and start talking to your mother. So those are some different situations that you could imagine. What would caring look like? So for example, if you are doing a chore for your family, I would say that caring would look like making sure that you do the entire chore from start to finish. Even if you have to take a break or something in the middle, that's okay. Just making sure that you do the chore and making sure that you do the chore to the best of your ability. So if you're wiping down the counters, try not to miss crumbs, do your best. And then also I would say, if you're doing a chore for your family, if they have a specific way that they like the chore to be done, so maybe they prefer that you take the trash all the way out to the trash can instead of just setting it right outside the front door. If there's a specific way that your family member would like to do the chore typically, and they've shown you how to do it before, try to honor that. That would be a really good way to show that you care about them and their opinions. And then we'll move on to the last little bit, which is signs of success and the affirmation. So signs of success. Congratulations, you are practicing caring when you treat yourself and others with care. When you let people know that what they say is important by looking at them and listening closely. And I would say there's a lot of other ways to let people know that you care, but that is a really common one. So if that's not something that you typically like to do, is looking at them directly and that you're listening to closely, you can show that in other ways. You can show that by kind of summarizing what they've said. You can show that by making sure that you're answering their questions. You can show that by making sure that you're having kind of a back and forth conversation. There's a lot of ways to do that. Another sign of success, when you handle things carefully, when you are gentle and loving with anything or anyone placed in your care, when you treat your body with respect, and when you work with enthusiasm and excellence. So another thing to note is that when you're treating your body with respect, it's okay if your natural thought pattern isn't automatically, I love my body. I know a lot of people have a really hard time with that, but making sure that you are trying to eat regularly, and if that's hard, there are a lot of resources out there that can help you. And there's also thought patterns like, oh, I don't like this part of my body. And one thing that you can do is say, okay, I don't like the way my legs look. And then immediately when you have that thought, you can acknowledge that and you can say, okay, I'm having a thought that I don't like the way my legs look. And then you can say, but my legs help me walk every single day. And it can kind of balance it out because it's just a statement, right? They're both just statements, but one can feel more honoring of your body and acknowledging what it can do. And then one is more of a statement about how, it isn't working for you. So trying to have both for a little bit of realism. I know sometimes we say like, oh, I'm a realist, and then we state like a whole bunch of negative things because our world is really negative in a lot of ways. But keep in mind that going too far either way, super positive or super negative, isn't actually realism. And it's okay to try to balance those thoughts out. Keep trying when you need more practice. If you act as if you don't care, as if nothing matters to you, when you ignore other people's needs, when you give less than your best to a job, when you treat things carelessly, when you ignore your own needs, and when you let things placed in your care fend for themselves, even pets. Yeah. And keep in mind, things like giving less than your best to a job. Your best does not mean the best that you could ever possibly do. Your best means with what energy you have and with what capacity you have. So if you only have 20% to give to a job today, that is your best. That 20% is your best. So don't be too hard on yourself if you don't meet every single thing every day. And finally, we'll close off with an affirmation. And the affirmation for today for care is, I care for others and myself. I pay loving attention to people and things I care about, and I give my best to every job. So, that's it for caring. If you have any thoughts about it, if you have any experiences with caring, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I always love to hear about it. If you have any other resources about caring, link them down below. And thank you all for joining me today. Have a good rest of your day.